Okay, it's time for another edition of the Nailsin Ratings. Well, this time I'm going to look at the AMC program The Terror. Now, The Terror is the name of one of two ships on this expedition that was set out in 1845 to try to map out the North Way Passage, which is going very close to the North Pole, going through the Arctic and trying to reach Asia and Russia or Siberia, what have you, on the other side without having to bother with, getting around the Americas, going down to South America, what have you, or going through the Panama Canal, which hadn't happened yet. So, this is what they were trying to map out, and it was led by Sir John Franklin, which was the Franklin expedition it was named for. And off they went. The Terror and the Erebus were the two ships of the British Royal Navy set with the task of mapping this out. Well, they went off and vanished and were never seen or heard from again. Several attempts were made to find them, recover them, what have you. It took quite a bit. I can't remember exactly the dates on it, but some bodies were found. It seemed that they had suffered from tuberculosis, some with scurvy and that sort of thing. But there were some notes there that they came across where that John Franklin had died pretty early on in the expedition, along with some other seamen they had. And it was never quite stated as to what killed him, why he died, or what have you. But the problem is that the ships got stuck in the ice, and they waited it out. They had tons of supplies, and they expected to get stuck for some amount of time, but they thought when the summer approached, it would melt, and then they could go forward. Well, it didn't melt, so there they were. They were to run out of supplies, and eventually they had to abandon the ships, and they tried to march their way across the Arctic to the nearest British post, and to the south of them, of course. And this would have meant marching 1,000 miles. So, needless to say, they didn't make it. There were stories from the local Inuit people who had seen them and what have you. There was also accounts of possible, I don't think it's possible. I think it's pretty much concluded now that they did engage in some cannibalism toward the end, when they started dying off and they were, getting hungry and had nothing left. And so that's it. They perished out there. But that was the accounts of Inuit people, and sometimes Victorian England would reject it and all this stuff. They thought that was terrible. All these savages, they know what they're talking about. That sort of thing. But it seemed pretty likely as to that's what happened. And eventually, like I said, the bodies were found and dug up, and they were remarkably preserved because of the cold and what have you. But for the longest time, it was seen as sort of this mysterious story of like a Bermuda Triangle type disappearance. Like, oh, they just vanished and off they went, and who knows where they went. Well, the elements is what did them in. And eventually, the Erebus was found. In 2014, they found the hull of it. So it didn't magically disappear. It's still there. The terror, on the accounts of the local Inuits, was that the ice, as it began to shift, would somewhat melt and somewhat refreeze and that sort of thing. It destroyed the ship and tore it to pieces. And so it's materials all over the place. Whereas the Erebus, it seems, stayed largely intact. So the hull is still there. But the position of it, they thought it was odd because it seems as if they might have tried to sell it through the slush at some point, and there were some accounts by the Inuit people that some of the crew may have returned to the ship, actually. So maybe they split apart, I don't know, but they said they could see lights in it and this sort of thing. And at some point they may have tried again to sail south, and they went down a little further, but once again it probably got trapped, and that's it. So there you go. That's pretty much my badly briefed details of the story in total of what really happened. But now we have this television series, which I didn't watch any presentations about what it was about. I just saw a few ads, the imagery and what have you. and then realized what it was about, and thought, oh, cool, well, I'll look at that, and thought, oh, it'll be this historical account. It's not. Now, granted, all historical accounts, especially something like this, you're doing an awful lot of guesswork. All the stories and the relationships between the men on the ship and what have you, that's mostly made up, and you would have to get something out of this, even if it was like a 2-hour movie. Here, it's I believe they're going to have 10 episodes of this series, and you got to fill it up with something. Right off the bat, you realize there's something supernatural going on. So I believe the book this is based on came out like around 2007, somewhere thereabouts. So the Erebus hadn't been found yet. So there was still, I guess, even all this time later, it still had this sort of, mysterious, atmosphere around its story, that there was something bizarre, or strange, or in this case, supernatural. There's a crewman who dies early on. He has a vision of an Inuit man who at first has some sort of strange mask on and this sort of thing. Why would he dream about that when he's new to the region and has no knowledge of it? So it appears that it's suggesting that, yes, an actual spirit or perhaps deity of the Inuit people appeared to this man as he passed away. And so it's one of the basic morality tales of your challenging nature, and it's not your business to do so, a man's arrogance, what have you, and certainly the arrogance of the British and explorers and what have you, invading this world that's not theirs. And there's an incident where an Inuit man and his daughter are out there, and they mistakenly shoot him, thinking that they're looking for this polar bear that they're afraid is stalking them out there. And they see something move, and they fire, and it's the old man. Well, he dies, and there's a miscommunication between them, and of course they don't know how to do the proper burial and what have you. And so now they're cursed, and so they believe they're being stalked by the polar bear still. But it's increasingly apparent that it's not just any polar bear. It's some kind of supernatural monster, or perhaps the deity, and it seems to care and have some sort of fondness for the woman. But as for the rest of the crewmen, no, he's picking them off one by one. And so it's suggesting, they were consumed by some supernatural horror in the Northwest Passage, and that's the story they're going for. To keep it as if it's, hey, it's not that obvious, maybe it is just a bear. No, at this point, no. It may be a bear of some sort, but it's clearly a supernatural creature. And it's, John Francis, the way it depicts his death, which we have no idea how he died, the real John Franklin, but this creature grabs him, rips his legs off, and then throws him down a hole where they had disposed of the old man. So it's clearly like, take that, asshole. That's what a bear wouldn't do that. Besides, why would he throw his meal down a hole he can't get back to? So, no, this is obviously a deity who's angered by these interlopers and is, bringing punishment down upon them. And basically that's it. The rest of it is a bunch of the soap operas between the class structures and what have you between the people, some of the Irish and all that. And you got that going. There's also a homosexual relationship that's on there that, of course, was not smiled upon in those days and has to be kept quiet. And but it's not that didn't happen. It's just we don't know. But it's one of those things, well, we got to have something going on here. So, as for the shooting of the Inuit man, no evidence whatsoever that anything like that happened. We do know the Inuit people saw them because they said so. They recognized them as searchers came looking for clues and whatnot, and brought pictures of these crewmen, and the Inuit guys recognized some of them. And the stories that they told seem to correspond with the facts as later searchers or researchers have found. So, but as far as an Inuit man being killed, no, there was nothing like that, and a woman being brought on to the ship and everything. No, I never heard of any stories like that. Maybe there is something, I just hadn't heard it all. But there's a good documentary on the find of the Erebus on Nova from PBS. It did a pretty good little documentary on all that, and it shows the hole where they found it, and so on and so forth. But there it didn't really give any details about something like that. So a lot of the elements, not just the supernatural parts of it, it is made up for the purposes of just filling up the time you have. Now, it does have a good atmosphere of horror, of fright, and there's no hope, and there really is no hope. It'll be interesting to see what they do. What is the ending for these guys? They're just waiting to die, and that's about it. I don't know. But so it does have that. I was a little upset for a bit there about, oh man, they're doing this supernatural thing, and it seems like that's kind of disrespectful to the real story. But it's not like you can say too soon. it's a really long time ago. But the actors are very good. This is well done. You've got Mance Rayder, but he's already dead. Spoiler. He's in it. You've got Lane from Mad Men. He's there. Yeah, good performances here. Good cast. The sets are excellent. And the mood is well done. So this is a recommend for the series. I'm going to follow it to the end. Again, I was a bit, like I said, kind of insulted at the idea. But hey, why should I be insulted? You know. But it could be an interesting story of its own. It's just taking a historical event and making fiction out of it, which wouldn't be the first time. And so hopefully they'll come up with a grand story based on the myth of the Franklin expedition rather than the real story, which we now know they didn't vanish into La La Land. So there you go. The Terror on AMC Monday nights. Do check it out. And I'm sure the first 3 episodes are available, or 4 episodes now are available on VOD and what have you. So there you go. The Terror. So far, as for ratings, 4 out of 5 stars, which is pretty good. And I'll keep following it and see if I can rate it in total eventually. And maybe I'll do another one on a couple of more episodes as it goes. So there you go. The Terror on AMC. Check it out. It's a good watch. Now, thanks for listening and watching. And why don't you go ahead and like and subscribe, and we'll do this again sometime. Yes, we will. In the meantime, why don't you check that link description below for the many stores I have that have quite a few goodies for you.